and absorbing Foreign Intelligence Service, SVR. Report circulating in the Kremlin today states that a clear example of if one gives someone enough freedom of action, they may destroy themselves by foolish actions is now playing out in the United States after the U.S. Department of Justice, DOJ, during the past 24 hours, unleashed 23 specialized teams of Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, agents to the homes of many of America's top journalists and in preparation for the Trump administration to begin jailing many of these reporters for their violation of 18 Section 798 of the U.S. Code, disclosure of classified information that, in part, says, whoever knowingly and willfully communicates or otherwise makes available to an unauthorized person, or publishes any classified information obtained by the processes of communication intelligence from the communications of any foreign government shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years, or both, according to this report, a fortnight, 2 weeks, ago prior to his assuming office. Then President-elect Donald Trump called on U.S. lawmakers to investigate NBC News for leaking highly classified American intelligence information and what he believed was an orchestrated plot by certain spy actors, working in collusion with the mainstream media, to destroy his coming presidency, and that when the president of NBC News, Deborah Turnus, was confronted about by the FBI yesterday, was swiftly removed from her position and abruptly transferred to Europe, knowing of what his own intelligence agencies were preparing to do against him once NBC News fired the first salvo against him. CIA order. We're taking traitor Trump out now. Trump, who says intelligence community giving out classified information to press like candy, aided by former U.S. Army General Michael Flynn, who was the U.S. military's top spy master, deployed a classic Canary Trap maneuver against these spy actors and their journalist abettors, and that is a method for exposing an information leak by giving different versions of sensitive information to each of several suspects and seeing which version gets leaked. The main bait deployed in this Trump-Flynn Canary Trap maneuver, this report notes, was through an innocuous telephonic conversation General Flynn initiated with Federation Ambassador Sergei Kislyak after the Obama regime had placed sanctions on Russia, and that General Flynn correctly detailed the substance of by his stating, it wasn't about sanctions, it was about the 35 guys who were thrown out. So that's what it turned out to be. It was basically, look, I know this happened, we'll review everything. I never said anything such as, we're going to review sanctions, or anything like that. Nearly immediately after General Flynn had talked to Ambassador Kislyak, this report details, the first bird captured in this Canary Trap maneuver was the Washington Post associate editor David Ignatius, who built his career on repeating what his CIA sources tell him, and who in his the 12th of January column wrote, according to a senior U.S. government official, Flynn phoned Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak several times on December 29th. The day the Obama administration announced the expulsion of 35 Russian officials as well as other measures in retaliation for the hacking, swiftly following David Ignatius into the Trump-Flynn Canary Trap. This report continues, were numerous other birds who have self-identified themselves as being from every mainstream media newsroom in America, including the New York Times, who just yesterday published phone records and intercepted calls show that members of Donald J. Trump's 2016 presidential campaign and other Trump associates had repeated contacts with senior Russian intelligence officials in the year before the election, according to 4 current and former American officials. And that the Kremlin responded to by stating, let's not believe this information. It's a newspaper report which is not based on any facts. Not being understood by the American people about this New York Times revelation, SVR analysts in this report note, is that the CIA classifies every single Russian government functionary as an intelligence official, and that prior to the U.S. presidential election, these voters knew that Trump had visited Russia. His now U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson had extensive meetings with President Putin and other top Federation officials when he was CEO of Exxon. General Flynn had visited Russia, and Trump's former campaign manager Paul Manafort, likewise, had extensive Russian ties due to his international election consulting business. In point of fact, this report continues, by the same criteria the U.S. mainstream media decries Trump, and anyone associating with him, for having ties to Russia, must also now include nearly every single top American corporation, their CEOs, and executives who, likewise, regularly meet and have phone calls with Russian intelligence officials including Pfizer, Boeing, Ford Motor Corporation, PepsiCo, Procter & Gamble, McDonald's, Mondelez International, General Motors, Johnson & Johnson, Cargill, Alcoa and General Electric, to just name a few. As it would be insane/beyond belief for any normal person to believe that the tens of thousands of American citizens and business leaders who daily visit Russia, and make phone calls there too, are all spies working for the Federation. This report further notes, the truest reason for these U.S. mainstream media journalists fanning the flames of Russia hysteria against Trump has nothing at all to do with reality but, instead, has everything to do with their wanting him impeached from office. In their zeal, however, to destroy Trump, this report continues, these U.S. mainstream media journalists have blindly overlooked the most important fact in this war they've started against their president, and that is these unelected intelligence operatives who are leaking classified information to them work for President Trump, not the other way around. And though a relatively small number of Trump's unelected intelligence operatives have, indeed, been colluding with the U.S. mainstream media to bring him down, this report says, these journalists, and their publisher leaders, have failed to notice at their peril that at their president's side to command is, at least, 1,271 government intelligence organizations, 1,931 private intelligence companies, in 10,000 locations in the United States, who are presently working on counterterrorism, homeland security, and intelligence, and that, when added together as a whole, includes over 854,000 Trump loyalists holding top-secret clearances, and who are sworn, and ready to defend him. Also failing to be noticed by the masses of these U.S. mainstream journalists, is that the Trump-Flynn Canary Trap maneuver has already sprung, as evidenced by President Trump secretly moving General Flynn to the most powerful, and secretive, American spy agency known as the Bureau of Intelligence and Research, INR, nearly 48 hours ago. It must be noted, however, this report states, that though the masses of these U.S. mainstream journalists are gleefully believing they've destroyed General Flynn and seriously damaged Trump, nothing could be further from the truth, with the devastating backlash to come from President Trump against them being noted by too few real/true reporters, but who, in just a few articles, are warning of what is to come, and include 1. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Glenn Greenwald warning these journalists, in the spectrum of crimes involving the leaking of classified information, publicly revealing the contents of SIGINT signals intelligence is one of the most serious felonies. Journalists, and all other non-governmental citizens, can be prosecuted under federal law for disclosing classified information only under the narrowest circumstances, reflecting how serious SIGINT is considered to be. One of those circumstances includes leaking the contents of intercepted communications. 2. Bloomberg News national security reporter Eli Lake warning these journalists. Normally intercepts of U.S. officials and citizens are some of the most tightly held government secrets. This is for good reason. Selectively disclosing details of private conversations monitored by the FBI or NSA gives the permanent state the power to destroy reputations from the cloak of anonymity. This is what police states do. 3. Senior correspondent for the Week News Service Damon Linker warning these journalists. America's spies anonymously took down Michael Flynn. That is deeply worrying. Far too many Trump critics appear not to care that these intelligence agents leaked highly sensitive information to the press, mostly because Trump critics are pleased with the result. But too little, and too late, did these warnings come to the masses of these U.S. mainstream journalists who have grossly violated the United States' most powerful laws against leaking classified information. This report says, and as evidenced by the less than 24-hour period between when General Flynn was secretly moved to his new intelligence position by President Trump and the FBI teams that began sweeping up journalists in both New York City and Washington, D.C., armed with what are called national security letters, NSLs. This report explains, these FBI teams are presenting their targeted Canary Trap journalist birdies with an administrative subpoena issued by the President Trump's federal government authorizing these agents to gather information for national security purposes and that do not require prior approval from a judge, and if spoken, or written, of by the recipient means automatic imprisonment. Most astonishing to note about what President Trump is doing in targeting these lawless journalists is that the road guide to what he is doing was, actually, created by President Obama, and though not known to the masses of the American people, had his U.S. Department of Justice prosecute more government leakers than all U.S. presidential administrations combined. Unlike President Obama, though, this report notes, President Trump has something on his side no other American president in history has ever had in battling against illegal government intelligence leaks to journalists. A stunning new poll showing that the American public now says that their trust and confidence in the mass media to report the news fully, accurately, and fairly has dropped to its lowest level ever recorded in Gallup polling history. Even worse for these law-breaking mainstream media journalists whom President Trump is soon to jail, this report further warns, is that the cries of injustice they'll soon spread across America in their terror and fear will fall on mostly deaf ears, and as evidenced by another stunning new poll showing that more of these people believe and trust Trump than these lying fake news propagandists who believe themselves to be above the laws everyone else has to obey. And in the preparations now being done for his jailing of these journalists, this report concludes, President Trump has begun to assemble his action team, and that includes his former Republican Party presidential campaign foes Governor Chris Christie and Senator Marco Rubio, both of whom are the first guests Trump has had to a private dinner meeting at the White House since his taking power, and with Governor Christie being one of the most powerful U.S. district attorneys against public corruption, and Senator Rubio being a top member of the U.S. Senate's Select Committee on Intelligence. These CIA-led propagandists will soon realize the brutal truth of the old American maxim, no one is above the law,